4 centuries after the collapse, a poet sings of kings, of bronze armor, towering citadels, of Achilles, of a world grander than his own. But by the time he sings, it's already gone. Around 1200 BCE, the Bronze Age Aegean collapsed. Palaces burned, walls fell silent, writing vanished. The great citadels of the Mycenaean world were abandoned. Trade networks failed. Communities once sustained by palace economies had to survive alone. For nearly 4 centuries, Greece entered what we now call the Dark Ages. Not because nothing happened, but because so little was written down. Linear B disappeared with the palaces themselves. When writing returned, the Greeks adapted the Phoenician alphabet, a flexible script for poetry, law, philosophy, and public speech. The palace world did not survive. Only memory remained. Homer composed his epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, roughly 4 centuries after the collapse, imagining a world greater than the one around him. Repeated phrases, swift-footed Achilles, rosy-fingered dawn, the wine-dark sea, helped the poet remember and perform. In a world without writing, poetry became the archive, memory built into meter. No single catastrophe explains the fall of Mycenaean society. Egyptian inscriptions describe invasions by groups later called the Sea Peoples, participants in the collapse, not its clear origin. Evidence points to prolonged drought and instability, weakening agriculture across the eastern Mediterranean. Harvest weakened, surpluses disappeared, and the palace economy, built on collected grain, stored wealth, and centralized control, began to fail. When the system faltered, the hierarchy built upon it collapsed. The Wanax, the supreme palace king, vanished from the historical record. In his place emerged smaller local basiles, village rulers presiding over reduced and fragmented communities. The age of palace kingdoms gave way to something smaller, harder, and more uncertain. Instead of written history, the past was preserved through story. Tales of rulers, monsters, divine cruelty, and war. Homer describes equipment that people no longer used in his own time, like the boar's tusk helmet, suggesting that details of the Bronze Age survived through storytelling. His poems evoke great halls and a warrior aristocracy, a social order that closely resembles what archaeology reveals at Mycenaean citadels. These stories are not history. They are memory, fractured, reshaped, carried across generations. One of those memories takes us south to Crete. In myth, Crete is ruled by King Minos, whose power stretches across the Aegean. From the Greek mainland, young men and women are sent as tribute, forced into a vast labyrinth and sacrificed to the Minotaur, a creature half man and half bull. Minos' own household is marked by divine punishment. His wife, Pasiphae, gives birth to the monster itself, a reminder that power in these stories is never innocent. It's dangerous and cursed. In Greek memory, Crete is powerful, and it must be escaped from. Theseus enters the labyrinth, kills the Minotaur, and ends the tribute. But victory brings tragedy. Forgetting to change his ship's black sail, he returns home under the sign of failure. Believing his son dead, Aegeus throws himself into the sea, which thereafter bears his name. Even geography absorbs tragedy. The Aegean Sea is named for a grieving king. Even success leaves wreckage. Minos employs the great draftsman Daedalus, the architect of the labyrinth itself. When Daedalus becomes too useful, too clever, Minos imprisons him. So Daedalus invents a way out. He fashions wings for himself and his son Icarus, feathers bound with wax, and they rise above the sea. For a moment, it is triumph. But Icarus climbs too high. The sun softens the wax. The wings come apart. The sea closes over him. Power builds what it cannot control. Another figure strides through the Dark Age imagination alone. Heracles. He's not a palace king. He has no archives, no walls. His very name means glory of Hera, yet Hera is the goddess who hates him the most. Driven into madness by her, he kills his own wife and children and spends the rest of his life performing impossible labors as punishment. Heracles wanders. He survives through brute strength, destroying monsters, but never escaping guilt, violence, or loss. He belongs to a different age, not the ordered palace world of the Bronze Age, but a fractured world that came after, where power is personal, suffering is unavoidable, and survival matters more than glory. Then come the stories of war. A foreign prince named Paris visits a wealthy court and takes Helen, the wife of another king. It's a private act and a catastrophic one. From it unfolds a war that spans the sea, draws in rival kingdoms, and devastates cities. At the center of that war stands a king greater than all others, Agamemnon. He commands kings, demands loyalty, takes what he wants. He is a memory of the Wanax, the supreme ruler of the Mycenaean palace world, exaggerated, brutal, and absolute. Before the fleet can sail to Troy, the winds fail. The goddess Artemis demands a price. Before the first ship sails, a daughter dies. To restore divine favor and secure military glory, Agamemnon sacrifices his own daughter, Iphigenia. The war cannot begin without the destruction of his own house. In this remembered world, ambition consumes even family. Kingship demands blood. The cost of glory begins at home. These are myths, but they echo something real. Late Bronze Age Hittite records refer to conflicts along this same Anatolian coast, suggesting that behind the legend lay genuine geopolitical tension. By the time these stories were sung, Greece no longer had kings like Agamemnon, but it had not forgotten what such power once looked like or what it had cost. Myth does not preserve dates. It preserves emotional truth. These stories remember a world of wealth, hierarchy, and centralized power. A world of rival kingdoms, heroic violence, and rulers who stood above the law. And then, collapse. When writing disappeared, art and story became the archive. Vase paintings, burial goods, and oral poetry carried the past forward when records vanished. The Greek Dark Ages were not empty centuries. They were centuries of memory. In the silence of abandoned megarons and the ash of burned citadels, stories were sung beside small village hearths. A civilization endured, not through walls, but through words. Cities would rise again. Writing would return in a new alphabet. Palace kingdoms would give way to polis, independent city-states. But Greece did not begin from nothing. And when a poet finally sang of kings, he was not inventing a past. He was remembering a world that refused to be forgotten.